Moving on to round 3 in the winner's bracket. We've got Tantrum Desire versus Heaven. Heaven is going to be on the left, Tantrum on the right, and of course Heaven, a masterful ladder player, but he is usually Aeon, so we'll get to see today whether or not he can handle himself with the king of the factions. Oh, I might have stepped on some toes there. Of course, there's some Cybern fanboys out there, and even fewer the Aeon fanboys, but I think overall, UEF is probably one of the most popular factions, and good on it for that, because UEF is one of the easiest and most straightforward factions to use. If you're curious about what to tackle jumping into the game as a fresh face, well then UEF might be the faction for you. If you previously have played RTSs and you love to go super aggressive, Cybern maybe, but UEF is a solid choice all the way around. Tantrum, Land Factory first, building out the 4 mass extractors in his base and queuing up the Hydro. No early aggression, going Engineers for the first 2 rounds, followed by a Mech Marine, which I guess could be called early aggression, but he is getting his Engineers out first. Heaven has gone for early Scout and Mech Marine, is just now getting his Engineers online, and is making up for his little bit of a belated approach to eco with some manual reclaim. You'll notice that these tree clumps are worth 10 mass, 100 power each if you're able to reclaim them as clumps, which he is on some of them there, and then he'll be able to slam down those mass extractors for a good bit of bonus. Mech Marine's gonna mutual KO, Scout's probably also mutual KO, and everything in the center comes out even. When was the last time you saw Scout Micro trying to take each other out? Heaven unfortunately taking the extra hit there, and Tantrum is going to come out victorious in the Scout battle. Snoop for the win, 9 out of 29 HP remaining. I think those things do 2 DPS, or 2 damage per hit. I am not entirely sure though. Second Land Factory for Heaven. He is going for a bit of an early land build. Hopefully there'll be an air factory in there somewhere, because this map is an odd one. Tag Craftiest Maximus has a bit of reclaim around the outside edges. You got to get into that. You've got a few rocks here. You've got your tree clumps around the base that you need to get, but the big draw of this map is the delicate balance that is reached between land, navy, and air. I personally have completely and utterly won land control and then lost the game because my opponent was able to get a T2 factory online in the northern edge, had all of the mass extractors on the outlying islands, with a couple T1 power generators on each one, not to mention the fact that you can build 2 hydros on this map underwater, and then he was able to just pump out Salem's until I couldn't do a dang thing about it, because the entire map is accessible to destroyers, and even the outside edges can be hit by frigates. If you lose naval control, you are in for an extremely bad time. So even, possibly even to a worse degree than Eye of the Storm, Navy is a very delicate balance. If you go Navy too early, you'll lose the land battle and win that way. If you go Navy too late, you'll lose your outlying bases, all of your power and whatnot, to the naval control, and you gotta just try to not do either one while also building some air. It's a complicated world out there. Heaven and Tantrum kind of vying for control with pairs of tanks and scouts on the left-hand side. Unlucky movement. This tank is going to run full on into the ACU. Scout's been eliminated. Might be able to get around the outside edge of the ACU's actual attack range, but a little bit of an issue nonetheless. It was not a superbly successful raid, but it did at least draw a little bit of attention away. On the northern edge, we have a single tank moving around this side. No strong movement to the north as of yet from Tantrum, but we do have an excellent play for air. Air Factory has just come online for Heaven. We had a requeuing of the factories to kind of recombobulate the eco around that. And then we have a total of 10 land factories planned for Heaven, single naval factory in the rear. On the right-hand side, we have 3 land factories, 4th on the front with 3 more coming in here for a total of 7. And then we do already have a naval factory online. Now, that is queued for a T1 sub, which is important to consider on this map. Usually the general consensus is you go frigates. Frigates are the most important naval unit. They're the beefiest, they're the highest DPS. T1 subs are kind of an afterthought, but on this particular map, you got all these mass extractors underwater, tons of engineers around, things that you need to kill on the outside edges. So if you get those subs out early, you're able to effectively do raiding and eliminate some of that eco that comes online for the other player. Heaven and Tantrum essentially lockstep for economy right now. I know there's a couple difference, but not enough to make that much of a difference. Heaven is stronger on the power build. I think that may lead into ACU upgrades or possibly an early T2. I'm not going to pretend to know what his game plan is for sure, but he may be going for pillar spam later on, judging by the amounts of land build power that he has at his disposal. I'm going to go ahead and shut down the betting. I hope everybody got in who wanted to get in, and we are going to see how this match plays out. Striker going to kill off 2 mass extractors. Absolutely lovely on that. Shortening up Heaven's eco advantage. Heaven is currently running 55 to 41 for Tantrum, mostly due to superior map control and taking advantage of said map control. Now that I look at it, if you look at the red versus the blue, it is roughly equal. Like, there's not a significant advantage on Heaven's side or on Tantrum's, but what you do see is Heaven is building his mass extractors. This is the same thing that we saw the last game. Looks like Tantrum is not. So this translates to a pretty significant lead in eco for Heaven. I would love to see this sub go back and kill off all those mexes, because this naval factory cannot be killed in time. Although it looks like Tantrum is going to circle around the outside edge. One thing that you can do with a factory placement like this is if you park the sub right here and attack the factory, the torpedoes constantly hit the sub that is constructing on the surface of the water right here, and that effectively locks the factory. So you will not be able to build anything out of there, and that gives time for the additional units to come from the other edge and kill the factory. Doesn't look like either player is going for additional naval facts, so looks like we're on the 1 factory combat initiative at the moment. But Tantrum has finally moved his ACU up to the north, claimed all the mexes, and is getting additional build power online. Heaven's still holding about a 20 mass advantage, but that is not the end of the world right now. There's enough reclaim on the map still to make up that difference, and I think it comes down more to unit micro and what the peoples are doing, as opposed to how are you damaging. The torpedoes are going under the factory. Interesting. I did not know that that was possible. But that does leave a 75 HP sub on that side, which will cause Tantrum fits, seeing as he only has 1 single frigate on that edge. This push in the center was a horrible mistake, because now Heaven has the superior number of tanks in the middle. These units are still streaming forward, and I know not why, but we do have kind of an eclectic collection of tanks scattered about the map, not in their proper places. Hopefully that does get sorted. Heaven is going to have to push back just a little bit with the ACU. That is not a danger to him per se, but he doesn't want to shed an unnecessary amount of HP when he doesn't need to. So he's just going to back off a little bit, regroup his units. I love the wall sections going down. Everyone needs a good wall, an excellent wall to guard their southern border. And that is going to kind of trip up the pathfinding. Excellent thing about a map that is mostly water around the outside edge is that you're able to build wall sections that completely connect areas instead of having a little tiny sliver of space where tanks can kind of move around the outside edge, either along the beach, because you can't always get the wall to connect against the water, or across the edge of the map border itself. So there will be a completely continuous closure on that edge, leaving you only having to defend 1 area instead of 2. That is a pillar that I see, and the pillars are a fine thing indeed. We've got the HQ online, we've got an engineer out that is throwing down a T2 power generator. You'll notice that Tantrum has essentially caught up on eco at this point. He's not behind to any degree that matters. And he is running a full suite of land factories. Let's go ahead and take a count. We've got total, oh dear, 12 factories, and he's overflowing mass. No. Build your T2 mass extractors, please. Although he did bring something online that is now pushing. I think his reclaim is getting him over the edge of overflow. Yeah, so 12 factories, and he's currently got 73 tanks, 5 artillery. Heaven has got 51 tanks, 5 pillars, 11 artillery, which I think would indicate a very slight advantage to Heaven on overall unit count. And then we've got 9 T1 factories with a single T2 HQ that is very heavily assisted. But I did call it in the earlier portion of the game. We've got multiple factories upgrading to support, so the number of pillars is about to be too damn high for Tantrum to take care of. Hopefully he can bring his own T2 HQ online and push out some pillars to answer this call. But at the moment, he's taking a bit of a beating. He's holding 50% map control. There's no disputing that, but he is going to start folding under the pressure of these T2 units very, very soon indeed. He is lagging about 4 mass in eco and quite a bit of power, essentially that T2 power generator worth, and he does know that he has a T2 HQ to contend with. All right, reclaim-wise, we got 194 for Tantrum and 2 freaking thousand for Heaven. Oh, dear Lord. Why do people do this to themselves? You could have had so many more tanks. So many more tanks. That's like, what? 20, 40 tanks? Something like that? No, that's too many. Brink is bad at math. It's about 50 mass per tank. So it would be 10 tanks for 500. No, that would be about 40 T1 tanks. Yeah, that explains the lead right there. Okay, good thing about it, Tantrum does have the hydro on the south side. He doesn't have his own hydros claimed, but then again, Heaven doesn't either, so I don't think that particularly matters. This, though, is a bad turn of events. This is going to be able to launch, just barely edge hit the 2 T2 mass extractors online down here. It's going to be able to start striking factories, taking build power offline, and might pose a danger to some other things as well. Should Tantrum go for a T2 HQ, that could be used to snipe it. So this is going to turn out quite badly indeed for the red if it's not taken care of, and relatively soon. First tack launcher is coming available momentarily. Of course, eliminating that is not going to do too much damage, but it does add up quite quickly indeed. The ACU does have the gun upgrade, does have overcharge available to it, but is in the wrong place. So these pillars are going to make it through into the build power in the rear. Tantrum is going to decide to move back forward and take on these units instead, since he has no hope of catching the units in the rear. He does also have just barely enough units to hold on the front line. Heaven is creeping with T1 point, and that's probably something that you never thought that you would see. We do have the T2 HQ online right over here. So we will see TMD come up and effective defenses against pretty much anything that Heaven can throw. I'm just waiting for the T3 shift from Heaven. Thankfully, Tantrum is able to keep control of all of his reclaim fields, although he is not taking advantage of them, and it hurts my very soul to the core. We've got a transport loading up for Heaven, probably going out to drop some of these bases, pick up the additional 6 mass extractors on each side of the map. A definitely no small thing, not anything you want to sneeze at. That is going to be a drop. No! Pillars in the base. That's going to be a loss of 2 T2 mass extractors. Not an easy thing to take. Don't know why he wasn't using the tack launcher to do that, but I suppose we can't fault him too much. Tantrum slowly but surely folding under the weight of these pillars, and he does not have any intel whatsoever on the other side of the map. doesn't know that there's a attack launcher, doesn't know how much has gone on in this base, no visibility on new units, nothing to tell him what to expect in the moments to come. Thankfully, the pillars have been eliminated in the center of the map as well. Tantrum holding on by the skin of his teeth, and in a situation like this, finally we have reclaim. Hallelujah! In a situation such as this, I would actually say for most other players that this is where you start your turnaround. Oh, there goes the energy storage too. Ouch. Because I have seen players bounce back from an assault like this, no problem whatsoever. Because look at all the reclaim, and it's all in Red's control. If he just got the engineers out to get it, he would be able to bring online so much production, so many units coming to the front. This power well, not necessarily the power, but the mass to spam up all of the triads that he needed to secure his position, it would all be his. But instead, he is squandering this resource. You can see the left side of the map picked completely clean of reclaim as Heaven fuels his war machine. And on the right-hand side, just a further collapse due to a detriment of units. And I don't think there's anything at this point that Tantrum can do to stop this onslaught. He's trying to build an energy storage in the rear. He's probably hard mass stalled. Yes, 20 out of 33. Down to 34 income due to the loss of all of his mass extractors on the outside edges. That tac missile tearing him to shreds in some instances, the pillars in others. I think that was due to a tac launcher right there. He had an additional T2 mass extractor that got picked off. And with the game freeze, I think it's safe to say that this match has ended a couple minutes into the future and the replay broke. Just to be sure, let me check the Tourney screen. And I do not have a winner marked yet, so I'm going to stick with this game for just a minute to see if it unfreezes. Yeah, Armed and Overclocked in chat pointing out the Tantrum wasn't using all his mass anyway, so not reclaiming isn't that bad. That's the problem, though, is that whenever you have a game, the person who stops scaling first loses in the vast majority of cases. So basically Tantrum scaled up to where he felt like he kind of balanced, and then he's overflowing when he does reclaim, which is not very often, and then he's just barely spending all of his mass when he's not reclaiming. You should always have extra build power for when you get reclaim, or to get the reclaim itself. If you can run 5 factories, you should probably have 6 or 7 factories and be reclaiming. If you have the mass to be running, 4 T2 factory spamming pillars, you should probably have 5, and you should still have a couple more T1 land factories and maybe a few extra engineers on the side to spam something up if you need it. Because when you have these engagements, you get, there's probably 600 to 800 mass just right here. Then if you go down here, there's another probably the same amount, 700 or so right there. And then he had control of this as well for quite a while before these units in ACU were able to shred this spot. An attack move engineer right here would be able to reclaim out to about right there on the field, and you don't even have to get in range of the fire from the enemy units. So if he had the build power to spend this, like strictly by the amount of mass available to the players, Tantrum had this. He could have won it, but instead we're left with this. He's got 1600 reclaim in his pocket. Heaven on the other side has, I can't switch because the sim speed is frozen. Dang it. Oh, well. Yeah, also Heaven did have a Navy advantage. I will readily admit that, but I don't think it would have been as big of a deal, because the way the land battle has played out, one player could have overpowered the other at any point in this, and Navy wouldn't have really been able to save it. That is one of the bad things about UEF Navy, is the destroyers that come online, they can't reach the entire map. You can with cruisers, but it's a bit of a slower advance. All right, let me check this out again. I've got word from Rowie. He says that Heaven has won. So we're going to get out of this game, declare it a loss for Tantrum. Well played by both of these guys, though. That was absolutely a pleasure to watch. I hope everybody can learn something from this about your builds, about scaling, and hopefully two different sides of the strategy for Tag Craftius Maximus. For this game, we're dropping down to the losers bracket. It is Pachi Pachi on the north, otherwise known as Turin Bar, and QFWFQ, otherwise known as Thomas, on the southern edge that we discussed before. The map is Point of Reach, version 4 if you're interested in that. And if we take a look at the heat map for Reclaim, you'll see that it is pretty evenly scattered across the entire area in the form of tree clumps. Not particularly large amounts of Reclaim, not any rocks to grab a hold of, so you got to be a little bit careful about managing your eco. But overall, these players are going to be in control of a lot of mass extractors, so the game has the potential to scale up very quickly to an absurd degree. Looks like we got the early transport coming in for Thomas. He is pushing up to the hydro after 3 mass extractors, built an extra power generator to get things rolling a little bit quicker. Then we got mass extractor number 4, built by an engineer that's now moving up to get manual reclaim and build mass extractors all the way up through the northern edge of the island. And then more power being reclaimed by the engineer through the south side. So that should be more than enough to get a transport online, coupled with these power generators, and the early portion of the game is basically going to boil down to an air fight. Of course, we are going to have Navy galore as the game moves on, but in the earliest portion, you are going to need to dominate the air game, because you're going to need that transport out early to drop all the islands, you're going to need bombers, you're going to need inties. Basically, everything depends on the speed and the queue in that air factory. It looks like Pachi Pachi is going to be moving over to the left with his ACU. Tourney is taking up residency on the western expansion. Brink is bad with directions. And that's going to give him access to a couple of land factories, some mass extractors, and then probably he will go for his main base build over here, centered around his ACU. This one is going to be slightly more protected than this base. Of course, you've got access for frigates to fire at a lot of things around the beach. This one definitely does still have that danger, but things are a little bit farther away from the water, so hopefully you can keep everything online. As far as transports go, at 25% built for Turin, Thomas has already got his 25% of the way to the other freaking island, so well done on that. He's going to drop engineers over on these mass extractors, hopefully take control of this entire island, and then we've got interceptors following up. Thomas is going to go for additional air factories as well. He's already got 3 planned according to his grid, and he's building loads of power generators to make this entire thing work. Looks like we do have an engineer moving over to the right side island. I am hoping that that will get there in time to actually build the things. It looks like Pachi is going for the right side expansion first. Yes. He'll be able to keep control of that with the ACU pretty effectively, so the more important drop is on this edge, of course. Kind of curious to see. Transport is chilling a little bit. Picked up another engineer, and he's dropping it back on the island to go ahead and get those mass extractors as quickly as possible. In addition, you've got the 3 on the outside island, both players moving for those with a walking speed engineer, and that scout is going to locate the ACU, letting Thomas know that, hey, I might actually be able to drop this home island. Usually the danger in this is that the ACU is available to just walk up to the nose and kill off whatever you try to drop there, but with that combat force missing, there is an opportunity here to drop a handful of artillery and tanks and be able to just sweep this, because there's only 1 T1 land factory available to build counter units. Of course, you could spam T1 point defense up in the channel, which will slow things down, but all in all, that could throw a massive wrench in the works for Turin Bar, and I would love to see something like that happen. Looks like Thomas is going to walk his ACU over to the right-hand side as well, but much later on in the game. That's going to give him a slower expansion. We got 29 mass to 39 mass for Pachi, seeing as he's brought online several of his things in advance, but it's going to give Thomas a more secure foothold in air and in land. You'll notice that we've got one land factory with the 4 mass extractors right there, whereas on this side we've got 2 land factories. He's finishing off the 4th mass extractor on this edge, and he already has his production up to be able to deny any hits on this island. Smart move as well to push a tank over to the right hand side, because that can deny any potential engineers dropped on that edge. I love the potential airlock over here. Thomas going for killing off some of the units coming out of that factory, but unfortunately he did not see that there were 3 interceptors on the other edge, so he's going to break away, move in this direction. Excellent push from Pachi to get that transport out of the way. Torrent's going to keep it alive for a little bit longer, and these NTs are going to move over to the right and return home. Bombers coming out for Thomas now. Of course, he does have the air production to push that. Looks like he might have strung pure bombers on one of the factories now that he's pretty confident in his air control. Nope, that is going to be Bomber, Scout, Interceptor. Decent mix indeed. That's going to start causing just a little bit of a headache for Pachi, but he has preemptively built a T1 anti-air. I think he realizes that the air game is lost and he wants to have something available to hopefully deal some damage to the incoming units. That UEF bomber getting shot down immediately. We've now got 2 mobile anti-airs damaging one of the interceptors on the other edge, and that is that for the aggression on the island. Thomas is now dropping some of his extremities, getting these mass extractors online as quickly as he possibly can. Turin running 65 mass per tick, and Thomas 57. That is mainly due to a T2 pair of T2 mass extractors on the other island. We've only got 1 over here. Thomas about to drop his 2nd. Then it looks like he does already have some others queued. So both of these guys going for a good bit of eco scaling. Neither player in the water yet, which is super weird. I don't think I've ever seen Navy delayed past the 5 or 6 minute mark on point of reach before, but it looks like both of these guys are just saying, you know what, it's all about the air today, so we're going to take this as far as we possibly can. Oh, nope, never mind. There is a naval factory. Okay, that makes things seem a little bit more normal. Turin edge building his factory over on that side, not necessarily in or near his base. And then we do have overlapping production started on the left. Oh my goodness. This is going to be very interesting. If frigates start building here, this is going to be utterly eradicated. Something to say about point of reach and other games where Navy is spread out and very important. I have noticed a trend, more Navy coming online down here now. So apparently about the 6.5 minute mark is where both these players decided, you know what, we need all the Navy right now. Something that I've noticed is that the players who distribute their naval build power tend to do better. When you have all of your build power in one place, if you lose Navy once, you end up with a situation where very quickly indeed your build power can be devastated and there's no coming back from that. However, if you distribute miscellaneous factories all over the place to build frigates everywhere on the map, and then you only build a lot of build power in one place, and you go T2 and then T3 Navy in that location, you tend to be much more resilient to strikes. And it's a very interesting thing to observe over the course of many games. 2 artilleries just barely getting out. Looks like about 5 T1 mass extractors are going to be the casualties for this drop, which is definitely no small change. That's going to put Pachi behind on overall eco, but it is not the end of the world. All right, frigate is online for both players, but we got 2 in the water for Thomas. Looks like Pachi was thinking about going this way with his UEF ACU and eliminating the naval threat on this side. Oh, hi, Navy facts. It's kind of hilarious that on a 20-kilometer map, they decided to build a few hundred meters apart from each other on their navies. But of course, there's a great advantage in production for Thomas, and I think he will quite easily take that location for his own, which puts Pachi in a bit of a bad spot because he's only got one extra naval factory on the other side of the map. However, looky here, we got a T2 transport dropping off T2 tanks. Pillars for the win. That means that somewhere around here we have got, there's the T2 Air HQ, there's the T2 Land Factory. Potentially Riptides will be able to even up the odds should things get really dicey. And then also we've got torpedo bombers coming out from that factory in addition to the transports. And we've got drop shenanigans on the way. This makes my heart smile. We're going to see a lot of cool plays. Not a stagnant game at all. We've already got 2 torp bombers on this navy over here. It is to no avail because, of course, that naval factory is going to get knocked offline. The reclaim will belong to Thomas. The bit of issue on this island is a whole nother thing altogether, because denying that many pillars is going to be a bit of a tough time. I think that with a couple of strategically placed T1 point events, though, such as that, and then the factories that are online in this area, it shouldn't be the end of the world, but it is definitely going to be a setback for Thomas. Both of these players running absolutely neck and neck on economy, on power, on build power. We do have more naval factories coming into the water over there. Looks like, yes, T2 factory just came online for Thomas as he's getting his first T2 power generator built that'll bring him up to par with Pachi's power output. We do have a support air factory as well over here. Both of these are going to get assisted once they are established, and we've got more naval factories planned on this side. As far as air goes, Pachi is looking at about 30 interceptors, 28 to be exact. And we've got 30 interceptors for Thomas, so a very even game. This transport did pass over a frigate on this edge, so Thomas has to know that it's there. We do have an interceptor moving over in that direction as we have a little bit of an assault from the pillars over in this area. Looks like I've got the drop coming in right over here. I don't know. The ACU is nearby, but it's not going to be able to completely defend this area. So I'm thinking there's still going to be some losses. Lost a mass extractor, going to lose all the artillery that was probably getting ready for a drop on that edge. Going to lose the mass extractors here, which thankfully we're not upgrading. ACU going to head up towards the front. Thomas does not have overcharge, but he will be able to damage soak with the ACU. The pillars are a bit of an issue. As far as HP goes, it takes 15 seconds of pounding to eliminate a single one with the ACU. What is in desperate need right now is an overcharge. Meanwhile, on the north, we've got mobile missile launchers patrolling the shores, torpedo bombers hammering away, and overall, Thomas not doing terribly well versus this oncoming force, but he is managing to hold naval domination. He has lost air, though. Looks like a massive gain in interceptors from Pachi, mostly due to the construction of about 6 to 7 new air factories, doing nothing but pumping out interceptors. That was an excellent play on his part. He realized that he had to maintain air control since he was losing Navy, and so dumped all of his economy into it. That's the thing about it. If you see yourself failing in one area, if there's another area that you can take advantage of, you have got to get it under your control. So with the air domination, he will be able to use the torpedo bombers to great effect, at least until the first cruiser comes online, which I don't think Thomas has a T2 Naval HQ yet. Pillars are gone, but along with them a handful of mass extractors, as we said. Yeah, no T2 Navy yet for either player, although the upgrade has begun for Turin Bar. Air coming down to the south, that is going to be a meetup. No. Okay. So Thomas got drawn in a bad way. He wasn't paying attention to the air. Part of it picked up, and that is going to be a total air loss again for Thomas as a transport drops in. But there's T1 anti-air. Not able to shoot the artillery off the bottom of the transport, but very damaging to the HP on that son of a gun. Tanks are going to move in and eliminate those Lobos without too much of a problem, only losing a couple of anti-air. So all in all, not a bad dealio. Of course, the point defense in the center there going down as well. So taking a look at the grand scheme of things, Tourney has got 174 mass income to 148. He's got 2,000 reclaim versus almost 6,000 reclaim. So I would place Tourney slightly ahead of Thomas in eco, but it is really anybody's game at this point because it's air versus navy, and both players dominate in their respective fields. The drops are going to be brutal because of the loss of air control, but at the same time, I don't know. Look at the air production that has come online down here. We have got 8 air factories already built, 2 are on the way. That is going to be a total of 12 T1s and then a T2 HQ that is also doing nothing but pumping out interceptors. This is the sway back and forth that you see on air games. So right now we've got 14 frigates, 5 subs, 62 interceptors, along with some mobile shields and flak. So T2 HQ definitely online for Thomas as well. But 61, 5, and 14 are the important numbers there. And then we're going to see 65, 12, and a shield. So the naval game has drawn even, the air game has drawn even, and the eco is slightly in favor of Pachi. So slowly but surely the yellow is starting to see a bit of an advantage, but it is by no means enough yet to be decisive. Looks like the second unit is going to be a destroyer. So that's going to lend a little weight to the Navy on the yellow side. But I think we are seeing a buildup of build power waiting to go at that T2 HQ that's now upgrading for Thomas. As soon as those dive in, we're going to see a massive uptick in production on Q's Navy. Gunships harassing over on this edge. I actually didn't think that the range would be significant enough for this, but look at that. Mobile missile launchers actually reach the enemy naval yards. So all that build power is going to be taken offline, and we do have another drop headed in with a couple of pillars. That is a very low HP transport, falling below 300, but it is going to be able to drop off the pillars, and it looks like Pachi is starting on T3 for the ACU. Probably going to be going for T3 power as the next step in order to move towards T3 air, because at this point it is getting a little stupid with the amounts of interceptors being produced. At some point you just got to say to yourself, you know what, the drops are too annoying. I have got to get T3 air online to make a difference with this. Looks like Thomas is starting to lose parts of his island over here. But you'll notice that he's got T2 HQ, or not T2 HQs, T2 mass extractors coming online on this edge. So losing these is not going to be a terribly huge deal. He does need to get TMD online though, and I don't see it queued anywhere because he already lost one mass extractor to the TAC launchers that are available on that side. All the NTs moving in now on the gunships. Just got to be careful not to fly over any kind of mobile flak or anything like that. If we go back over, we can see that there's over 100, almost 120 interceptors for Pachi. Most of them out of fuel versus, or not most of them, but 30 of them out of fuel versus 108 for Thomas. Total air production is looking like 4, 9, 11 factories counting the HQs. So Thomas is going to be ahead in overall air production, might open the way to actually securing an air win. But of course, if we do see T3 air come online, it is going to throw a whole nother wrench in the works. Pachi coming up on his 6th T2 power generator. That is an absolutely ludicrous amount of T2 power. We've got 3 in the field for Thomas, 4 counting the one up there, but I think his difference is made up in a pretty good quantity of T1s. Oh, nope, 5 and 6 over on the other islands. So he is distributing his power grid quite a bit, but he does have the same amount overall. So, looking at the eco, Q is still staying within 20 mass of Pachi's numbers, despite having lost a significant portion of the island over here. So that is kind of an interesting thing to see going forward. He's losing some air control, but it's not making that much of a difference at all. T2 Navy is online. We got Cruiser out first. Better get a destroyer online, you son of a diddly, because if you do not, you are going to be in a bad stretch. That cruiser is going to get killed off by the incoming Navy if you're not careful. Still more rolling off the production lines. Looking pretty decent. And a single frigate is going to get eliminated by a pack of such over on that edge. The water is a dangerous place to be right now. We've got several torpedo bombers in the air from Pachi that are roaming relatively free at the moment. There definitely are enough interceptors to kill those off on Thomas's side, but you got to get them in the right location, and that is the critical weakness of the interceptor. Theoretically speaking, the interceptor does do more damage per mass than the ASF, but the ASF having more HP in the individual air units and then how much faster the ASF are come out light years ahead of where the interceptors are at. So that is something to bear in mind when you shift to the T3. Alright, things have started to settle ever so slightly. We've got some triads coming online over on this side. That's going to lock down the peninsula and effectively bisect that island. Although I find it kind of hilarious that Thomas is claiming the mass extractors again behind his opponent's units. We're just looking at a little bit of a trap right here in the center, and he's even going for reclaim on this edge, getting all the mass that he can possibly get his grubby little mitts on as he brings his eco ahead of Pachi's for the first time in a long time. That means he's brought online quite the good quantity of T2 mass extractors, and he's also getting some flak next to his ACU. So he is expecting some sort of shenanigans, whether that is a drop or T2 gunships trying to snipe him or whatever the case may be. He wants to get some anti-air online to keep that ACU safe. And speaking of air, that is a T3 scout that I see down there. He's got the first T3 power generator online. He's popping out a couple of ASF, and I'm sure that we're going to see a strat bomber sooner rather than later. Looks like Pachi has also got a T3 HQ up, but he hasn't built his T3 power yet, so he's going to be a little bit behind in getting his real air production online. More tanks being dropped in addition to a couple of mobile missile launchers on this side and some flak, so that's going to give Yellow the tools that he needs to be able to push against these triads, putting Thomas a little bit on his back foot. Pachi is content waging a campaign against this island because he knows he can take out a significant chunk of economy over here if he is successful in this push, and he'll be able to build all of these mass extractors for himself, giving himself about 66% map control effectively if you divide it into 6 chunks. Alright, looking at the home base, we've got full T2 mexes, most of them capped there. Full T2 mexes on Yellow's island as well, but no cappages. So that is where the difference lies in this eco. 210 for Q, and whoa, 223 on the jump for Pachi. That must have been reclaim that he bit into. No, that is a horrendous power stall. Oh my goodness, there it is. So we're at 242 versus 212. That's why I was seeing such ridiculous readings on the eco. Oh dear. Destroyer and shield boat got way out of place. They're commenting on that in the sidebar there. Torpedo is able to take those out without too much of an issue at all. And now Q is at a little bit of a disadvantage on the Navy. Looks like we've got 1 destroyer, 1 cruiser versus 2 destroyers, 1 cruiser, and 2 shield boats. Again, it is not the end of the world, but it is not looking particularly good either. Oh my goodness. When did you ever think you would see clink hammers in an actual tournament setting? These clink hammers are reaching out and just pounding the base on this side. He is absolutely determined to take that away from Gray. Looks like another T3 power generator is necessary. It is being built with a vengeance, 2 actually, in order to support an Omni and a shield over the build power. So great work there from Pachi. Pachi's running about 5,000 reclaim currently on 221 income. Q is pushing 229 income with much better eco balance on 15,000 reclaim. So with that kind of reclaim difference, we're talking quite a substantial amount. I don't think that there is a significant difference between the players, but if this number keeps climbing, there could be problems. That is where I'm gonna leave that. 244 to 227, that is about a 20 lead, not even that, about 15 lead. And we do have T3 air out for both players. Pachi commenting, quality game, quality game. Don't know what they're talking about. This has been pushing and shoving, tit for tat for pretty much the entire run. It has gotten a little bit stagnant now, but that's only because the players have settled in to where they need to be. Got a couple of torpedo defenses on that side. We'll shred those frigates before too much can be done there. Would love to see all of these go to T2 mass extractors. Oh dear. That is a group of strat bombers over there. But unfortunately, this air scout, oh, it winged over just in time. He saw them on the scout, but I don't know that he saw them. He would have had to have been looking at that location at that moment because the scout quickly passed that by. All right, so 3 strat bombers already built. Looks like we've got another coming. Took me a while to figure out what cruiser TMD sound was. All right. Let's go take a unit count while we're sitting here looking at this. I've got 4 strats, 8 ASF, 171 inties. Good lord. 222 inties and 8 ASF. How do you get over 200 interceptors? Why? Why is this even a thing? I do like how the air factories have been control K'd up in here so that those can be reclaimed, the mass cycled into other things. That is a lovely proposition indeed. Well, we've got T3 mass extractor upgrades going down in the core of Thomas's base. He is consistently losing out on eco now that the artillery is starting to affect this edge, but he's still keeping it over 200 thanks to the mass extractor upgrades coming online in his base. We've already got 3 T3 mexes online for Pachi, which is definitely where that extra eco is coming from. On this side, as this catches up, should become less of a big deal. Still within that 20 to 30 mass striking range there, less than, well, no, about 10% difference in eco between the players. Let's see. Torp bombers coming in on the Navy. This could be a problem, but the air is right here and ready to fight. Thomas has just got to pull it in. We're now getting to the point in the game where grand scheme strategy is going to be a bit more important. Oh, there went the the cruiser to the torps. All the anti-air is now gone. It's going to be a question of whether or not Pachi can get all of his air in one place to fight this. And it looks like he is, yes. This is the part of the game where your mental state starts lagging behind where the game is. Oh dear Lord, no. No! The Strat Bomber's caught up by the air right over there. He's flying his entire Air Force over flak, and cruisers, oh dear Lord. Sorry, not flak, but it is cruisers. He's gonna separate and try to get in behind with the ASF. Oh, that was a good turn with the interceptors, but now the main group is going to come around. There's just too many over here, and he is fighting over the enemy cruisers. That was a horrific decision on his part. That is going to leave him with a total air loss on his hands, but it did put Navy on the wrong side of the map. We've got a T3 UEF commander drop with the gun upgrade. That is ballin'. T3 transport dropping that son of a gun off while the air is distracted, and then the Navy is moving around this side of the map in order to strike at the heart of Pachi's base. This could actually make the difference. It's going to take offline a bunch of build power, several mass extractors. The ACU is getting quite low on HP. He needs to focus fire down these other point defense before we see some kind of combat air unit come online. It would be a shame to see that ACU drop to a single Strat Bomber, but it looks like Pachi's got more pressing concerns. He's brought a T2 transport over here. ACU is at 200 HP. No! That single T1 PD, if he would have just retargeted it. No! That is unbelievable. Okay. So if that had worked, if Thomas had simply retargeted his point defense on the proper things to keep his ACU safe, there's no reason that he should have died there. None. He had every advantage going into that. If he had succeeded in this, they would have traded islands effectively. But there's a chance that they wouldn't have even traded islands, because this would have gone down to the Navy. So playing this out through, it would have still been anybody's game. The only significant disadvantage being the air control on Yellow's side. Now that could have been made up over time. It would have been a huge advantage, but it's not single-handedly game winning unless there is a strategic snipe. This was so unfortunate. Oh my goodness. Well played to both of these guys. That was a brilliant game. I love seeing the push and the shove, them going back and forth on the islands, little strategic plays here and there. It's always good to see the higher rated players going at it, because they've got the APM to pull this interesting stuff, except for when their ACU is sitting in front of point defense. Well played indeed, and GG Pachi as he moves on through the rest of the bracket. That is gonna wrap everything up for this video, guys. If you enjoyed it, feel free to drop a like and share it with someone. If you want to support the channel, catch the streams, or join the Discord, check out the links in the description. Thank you all for being at least partially insane, and I will see you in the next one.